My name is David Parekh. I'm the Vice President Research and Director of United Technologies Research Center. United Technologies is a Fortune 50 company that focuses on aerospace, commercial, and industrial products, has market-leading companies such as Pratt & Whitney for jet engines and Otis elevators, Carrier air conditioning, Sikorsky helicopters, and a whole range of companies in that space. Our role within the Research Center is to do the research that provides the foundation for future products for these companies, to work on the things that are developing new methods and tools that cut across and support the businesses that are part of the UTC family.
Fantastic.
So the EIRC is the International Energy Research Center. And it was really born out of a vision of really seeing that energy is a critical need in our time. In fact, we talk a lot about vehicles and the amount of energy they use. People often don't realize that buildings themselves use 40% of all energy. And yet when you look at that number and you look at the building industry, you realize often it's very fragmented, meaning that the people who make decisions and use the buildings are often disconnected. So you have architects and owners designing things, you have contractors and others developing the engineering and the products that go in, and then you have the tenants afterward who may use the building in a completely different way than it's designed. And what often happens is the promise and the potential of significant energy reduction, for example in the building environment, is not realized because people do not take a systems view of the building. One of the things we've learned from our aerospace experience, having developed a lot of vehicles and also technologies for the aerospace industry, is when you develop an airplane, you have to take a systems approach because all the components are interconnected and affect each other. And really the opportunity we see with the EIRC is to take the same systems approach to energy. Not just in buildings, but sets of buildings. Not just in sets of buildings, but those sets of buildings connected to smart grids and to what you do in a district. And not just the technology around that, but what about the policies that actually drive what people do? What about considering what are the business models that would make a lot of the things that we wish to see happen economically viable? And so it's the integration of technologies, it's the integration of policy, it's the integration of business models that are really key, we feel, to being able to make a significant dent and make progress in the energy space. Ireland to us is very special, and it's special in this way. I mean, people have heard me say this many times. Ireland has the scale of a nation, but the agility of a startup. And the thing we found is if you want to do something bold, if you want to do something transformational, not incremental, you need to have a country and in fact a system that's willing to adapt. A friend of mine once said that when you're trying to accomplish something big, you have to have a bold vision, and you start small, but you scale fast. And what I've seen in Ireland is the willingness and the ability to adapt, to do things that had never been done before, to bring people together from public and private sector. And what we saw in Ireland were all the building blocks in terms of multinational companies here, SMEs, you have great universities, and you have a government that is very proactive in terms of trying to bring the country forward in not only following the rest, but also leading the rest in many areas. And so it's this whole sense of being a country of scale, but agile because it's small, where one can do test beds, where one can pioneer new ideas. That was very compelling to us and is. I've been in the research world for my whole career. And in being in there, I've seen many, many models sort of evolve. I mean, there was a time when large companies were almost monopolies and big enough could do all the research themselves. And then now with all the globalization, pressures of Wall Street, a lot of folks have moved to another extreme where it's only open innovation and only buying things outside. And you need a hybrid model where you have a strong core internally, but you also effectively partner outside. I mean, it's an interesting, I think, a fact that everyone would agree to, but don't often think about the implications of. And that is, there are more smart people outside your building than inside it. And when you think about that, you say, okay, how can I make sure to harness some of the best ideas and bring them in? The other part that's kind of interesting about collaboration is in collaboration, you don't simply bring one person's idea and another person's idea together to simply make them work together. You actually create new ideas that neither party would have had if not for the collaboration. And so we see, as we're trying to do something transformational in the area of energy, that it's real critical to bring people with different points of view, different expertise, folks who own different parts of the problem. The energy challenge is so large that no single company or university, organization, or even country for that matter can solve it. And as a result, you need to bring the folks together who are the stakeholders who own all different pieces of that. So I think the combination of being able to harness great ideas, even outside your own organization, the realization that the challenge is much larger than any single entity can solve, and also the realization that when you bring this to market, the solutions you're going to bring to market are going to be interdependent on what others are bringing to market as well. And so this really, I think, drives for the need for collaboration, particularly in the pre-competitive areas. No, I don't. Particularly if one focuses on the things where there's common interest and where one can even, segregate or ring fence certain areas. So every company will have certain things that they consider to be proprietary, and they work it on their own. And that's a piece of it. But then there are other things where there's an advantage to do that collaboratively. And what we see within the EIRC and this International Energy Research Center is the construct and the structures and the framework by which one can both protect one's own proprietary information, but then effectively collaborate with others in areas that you want to do jointly. And so I think the fact that there are other companies in here, and certainly other universities, will only make the quality of the research better. And then what we can do and can be done is, I think, find the areas in which we can collaborate, focus on that, and still can compete in the marketplace on our own individual approaches on how to monetize those ideas or how to take them to market. The other thing we're doing with regard to the International Energy Center is we're trying to bring together companies that are also very complementary. And so in the way we're reaching out to corporations, so we're saying, okay, who owns all different parts of the problem? There are folks who build the systems for buildings. There are folks who worry about the grid. There are folks who are bringing in information technology. Others may worry about sensors, others about software. And so what you find is, if you start putting together the whole ecosystem of the technologies and products that you need, that it naturally brings together an assemblage of companies that, while they may compete in certain areas, are very complementary in others. And this is really the mosaic that is, I think, the heart of what we're seeking to do within the International Energy Research Center, is to bring the companies together that are complementary. So for example, a utility would not care about developing actually the products within the building that are being sold. On the other hand, what's developed in the building deeply affects what they do with it. An automotive company probably won't develop biofuels that may power their vehicles, or necessarily the charging station in which their plug-in hybrid is plugged in. On the other hand, it affects their business and what they do. And so they would benefit from collaborating with those who work on the other parts of the system. Well, again, it's back to my earlier point about Ireland being very agile, but also the raw materials and the building blocks are here. There are numerous multinationals already in Ireland for many other reasons, in the ICT, in the biopharma, biotech area, and so many of these players are already here. There's been significant investment of the country into universities in raising the quality of research and the talent here, and it's very easy for all of these groups to collaborate. One of the reasons we're not in Ireland is because of the market. Ireland's small. It is not the market. On the other hand, Ireland becomes a wonderful place in which to test bed, to try, to prototype ideas that can be taken to the markets that are large. And part of the factor in that, and why it's very attractive, is Ireland, because it's small and because I think it has tremendous sort of insight and intent about the future, has decided to be, by 2020, nearly 40% dependent on renewable energy, or actually utilize renewable energy in that fashion. That significant rate of penetration of renewable energy and other sources of energy and a system's approach to energy will uncover a lot of the challenges that other countries will face as they go down that road. And so it's a place to get the early learning very effectively, because the rate, the pace, the scale at which this country, Ireland, is moving in that direction. As we came to Ireland, we began thinking about, okay, where would be a natural place to have as a hub? I mean, we really see the International Energy Research Center as reaching to all of Ireland. There are top researchers all across the island. And in fact, beyond that, beyond Ireland, even to Europe. That, if this concept works right, it would provide a magnet and an infrastructure by which top researchers throughout Europe could be involved and be a part of that. So there's no need to recreate what already exists in other parts of Ireland or in other parts of Europe. But every center and every successful entity has to have a home. That, it's sort of like the whole adage about if you have a common computer, it's not well taken care of because no one owns it. And so we saw that as you think about what would be the attributes you would wish for the home of a center like this, you would want a place that had a proven track record of collaboration, a place that had the infrastructure to be able to manage operations. So just simple things such as signing contracts, hiring, all those things. You don't want to have to recreate all that. You want a place that has a track record of working effectively with the EU and EU programs. You want something who, in its very charter, is at least national in scale, that's viewed not as owned or a part of any single region of the country or a university, but is really an asset of the country. So as we looked at that and thought about this space, we thought, wow, Tyndall would very well fit that model. Then we began to think of other things. We said, okay, well, as we looked at the country, where is there a natural clustering of all different dimensions of energy in terms of some of the focused research? So, for example, in marine, in optimized buildings, in things related to networks, in things related to methodology and mathematics around optimization. There are clusters of that research already in the Cork region. A lot of the things we see with regard to the challenges of bringing energy solutions to the field are going to be ones that really depend on engineering and engineering talent. The University College Cork has nearly half of all the engineering students in the country. So when you think about the energy centers that already exist there, the talent pool with regard to the students, it's a natural place for the cluster. But having said that, Cork doesn't have all the smartest people in the world either. And there are very good people all throughout, in Dublin and Galway and Maynooth and other places, Belfast, and you want to bring them in as well and have them be a part of that activity. The other point I would make with regard to what we saw as very attractive about Tyndall is we as a company have been in the energy business, making systems that produce energy, use energy, and convert it to useful work, whether for managing climate in buildings or moving people vertically up and down tall buildings or moving them across oceans in airplanes with our jet engines. And so we've deeply understood energy and what's needed for that. But what's interesting for us as we think about the future is it's not just about making better heat exchangers, compressors, and distribution systems for the energy systems that we make, but it's about thinking about systems. It's about thinking about optimization and control. It's about thinking about the integration of the cyber and the physical. And so when you think about what's needed with regard to sensing, with regard to optimization, with regard to software, with regard to interaction with people, you begin to realize that there are a whole nother set of skill sets that needed to be brought to the table beyond the traditional, what are considered energy skill sets. And when you look at Tyndall, you realize, wow, this is a place that is world-class with regard to ICT, with regard to what one does in sensors, with what one does with regard to architectures and optimization. And so a lot of the building blocks that are needed to really transform how energy systems and energy solutions are developed reside right there. And so the companies that are in the energy space understand their business well. They know how to make those components well. What they need is the folks who can work with them to stitch it all together. We're the kind of company and the kind of research center where we don't do things simply to dabble. We figure if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well. The other part is we've seen if one does not make a significant investment, it's not something that's a priority. And so as we looked at this center, we said certainly there would be an opportunity to just say, well, let everyone in for a nominal amount. And so in that fashion, you say, okay, I get as broad a net as I can. But interestingly enough, I think you find that you don't have really serious players who are seriously engaged. We think in order to solve some of the challenges we face in energy, you need partners at the table who make this a priority. And so one way we felt to be able to enable that was to say, okay, it takes serious commitment to be a part of this enterprise. The other part is the Irish government has made a serious commitment. In the midst of the economic challenges that we all know and face today, the Irish government has set aside 20 million euros in order to enable and launch and seed this new energy center. It would make no sense for companies to come in and say, yes, I'll throw in a few euros to be part of the center. There needs to be matched substantial commitment. And its commitment, not just in terms of resources, but in terms of involvement. You know, we see that part of what will characterize and define the member companies that are part of this energy center is all people. They may even have some of their equipment. They'll be truly engaged in a high bandwidth fashion. In closing, I would just say that the challenge of energy matters. 40% of all energy is used in buildings. We're seeing the impact of energy, you know, whether you think about climate or you think about the bottom line with regard to cost, whether you think about competitiveness, these things matter. And we need to tackle them because it's the right thing to do, not only in terms of sort of what's right to do for society, but it's right to do from the standpoint of business. In order to tackle this challenge, we have to work together and collaborate. The International Energy Research Center provides the venue and the framework by which the people who can solve this problem and make substantial progress in developing solutions that can be brought to market and transform society will all be here. This is what we're excited about. This is why we think it matters. This is why we've already committed to being a partner.